Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of the witnesses for coming. Ms. Gravel, the National Housing Trust Fund was authorized in the Housing and Economic Recovery Act of 2008, specifically to address the housing needs of extremely low-income households. The NHFTF is a block grant to states that, once funded, can be used to produce, preserve, rehabilitate, and operate rental homes and for very low-income households. At least 90% of the funds must be used for rental housing, and at least 75% must benefit extremely low-income households. The NHTF is intended to be a permanent program with dedicated sources of funding, not subject to the annual appropriation process. The funds are to be distributed by formula based on factors detailed in the statute. With the $5 billion investment, Michigan would receive $146.1 million. The NHTF was initially to be funded by contributions from the government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. However, shortly after HERA was enacted, the financial crisis hit, and of course these agencies were taken over by conservatorship, and funding was suspended. And of course, Congress has never actually put the money in the first place. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition has talked a great deal about assistance to renters, that these individuals need some kind of help and could benefit greatly from it. And there have even been some who have talked about a renter's tax credit. How do you respond to those kind of thoughts?
Well, you could have a renter's tax credit for low-income people if you make it refundable, but it wouldn't work otherwise because very low-income people generally don't pay taxes because of the earned income credit and other provisions. So, I mean, for getting money to low-income housing, I mean, there's a lot of different routes. I mean, the low-income housing credit in the tax code is one method, but it has to pass through a lot of middlemen on the way. So a lot of folks think grants would be better. And then a lot of, you know, the other thing you could do is give people vouchers for rental housing, just directly from the government. Or, as I said, you could do it through refundable tax credit. The problem is people who don't file taxes then would have to file. So a lot of people do if they're working because of the earned income credit. But, you know, there's all these, for this particular objective, there's a lot of different ways to get there. And I would say, maybe Eric can tell me what he thinks, the consensus is that usually these things are better done through spending rather than routing them through the tax system.
Are there any other thoughts or ways that we might want to look at or could look at to try and make sure that these individuals or this category of citizens actually get some benefit that might move them a little bit beyond where they are relative to decent housing? You
know, low-income housing issues in general are not really, you know, something that I've studied a great deal, but I think there has been a concern about diversifying neighborhoods so you don't have just pockets of low-income people in the same place. Those are some of the issues I know that came up with public housing. But I think there's, you know, an economist might say the easiest way is to give people a voucher to help pay their rent. That might be the easiest, most straightforward way to do it.
Yes.
Just mention real quick, as I mentioned in my testimony, the real difference between owners and renters is that we don't tax imputed rent for owners, and I suggested in my testimony that we stop taxing rent. Now, of course, we could limit that to rents charged below a certain level that are affordable, and if the market is competitive in certain places, that'll get passed on to the renter.
Thank you both very much.